So, let's talk about your quiz for just a moment. Excuse me, ladies. Listen, I'm worried about the quiz. First off, I'm really happy about something. I thought that the second question on the quiz would really give a lot of people a hard time, and I do remember at one point seeing something like that on a state test, either on an actual state test question or one of the ones that the state released to the public. I'm really not sure, but I remember seeing something like that, and I wrote myself a note, and I said this year make sure I do questions like that because I felt that I hadn't done many of them in the past, girls. Hey, shh. I felt that I hadn't done many like that in the past, and I thought it would give people a lot of trouble. Yet you guys are doing a great job on that second question. So what I thought, sometimes the teacher thinks you understand everything, and then they find out that you didn't. And sometimes they think you don't understand, and you actually do. That's one of the great things about these quizzes. I get to see what you're good at and what you're not. Now, if you would have said to me that you're going to give a two-question quiz that looked just like the quiz I've been giving you now, and said which of those two questions are the kids going to get right and fully understand that, I said, oh, they're going to do great on number one. And then they're going to have a hard time with number two. And naturally, I was completely wrong. Everybody seems to be doing a really good job on number two, and some people a good job on number one, but I have a very big fear with number one. And I want to go through that right now because this is a super huge, super important point. Look, there's this concept in the world called prerequisites. What did I just say? Prerequisites. Prerequisites. A prerequisite is a skill that you need to have before you can master the next skill. Now, I'll give you an example of prerequisites. If you wanted to talk about someone who would teach this particular class, there are some things you need to know. Not only do you need to know the math, okay, but you're going to need to know how to use this projector. You're going to need to know how to use the smart pen or the stylus. You're going to need to know how to operate the programs that everything was in to get this started. In fact, last year, when I had my double knee replacement, my son Jimmy took over my classes for the 3 weeks that I was out. And what was really cool is he had my laptop. I put all the stuff on the laptop. He knew how to sync all of it. He knows how I run my classes. So the kids were able to seamlessly go with it. You know how sometimes you get a sub and the sub has no idea how class operates? Well, in Jimmy's case, because he did understand, the kids really didn't miss that much. Now, what I fear with you guys is that I would call the ability to do an equation, like the first equation on the quiz, which was 4x minus 5 is 11, I would call this prerequisite knowledge. In other words, this is something that I know for a fact is done in 6th grade. I know it's done a lot in 7th grade. And yet, when I look at a lot of people's papers, Chris, you're one of these guys, Diana, the way you expressed yours, I couldn't give you full credit, but you had the right idea. People just put this. And when I see that, to me it means that people look at the equation and they do the following reasoning. Not that the reasoning's wrong. They say, well, 4 times what number take away 5 is 11. Well, let me think. Oh, I know. It's 4. Because 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 minus 5 is 11. I got it. The answer is 4. Now, what you're doing is not necessarily wrong, but it is foolish. And I'll explain to you why. Let's say, I know that there are some people in this class who play soccer. Right? Raise your hand if you play soccer. Okay. Let's say that we're going to get a soccer team together and we're going to play against the all-star 5-year-olds. Are you going to beat them?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are you necessarily better than them? No. You're bigger, you're stronger, you're faster, you can knock them over at will, you have better running capacity, better lung capacity. You're going to beat 5-year-olds. I don't care if they're the all-American 5-year-old team, you're still going to beat them because 13-year-olds are so much better than 5-year-olds. Now, what if you played a 9-year-old all-star team? Would you beat them? I think so. I think so. What if you played an 11-year-old all-star team? Maybe. Maybe not. What if you played the U.S. Olympic team?
Hell yeah. Crush them.
See, the thing of it is, if you're a soccer player, you could go play those little 5-year-olds, and they're so easy to beat that you could like just kick the ball up the field. And because you're so much faster than a 5-year-old, one of your guys will win the race to the ball, and he'll break in on the goal. And the 5-year-old is so tiny, he doesn't block any of the goal. In fact, don't 5-year-olds use little tiny goals? Right? And you got this big goal to shoot at, you'd score, and I can see you now running around. I can see Chris scoring, going, yeah, ripping his shirt off, falling down to his knees, the whole deal. I scored on a 5-year-old. Now, clearly, that would be a joke. But could you imagine if you scored on the Olympic goalie? Now Chris might just do exactly that. He would get really, really, really excited. If you're going to play tough competition, there's a right way to play. A right way to play the game. You need to execute. You can't make mistakes, etc. At some point in the future, you are going to do equations like this.
Where's the calculator?
You would be allowed to use a calculator on it. However,
I still got it wrong.
yeah, it's still very complicated. If you don't learn your, this is like playing the U.S. Olympic team, okay? If you don't learn your basic fundamental steps and processes and strategies for solving an equation, hey, I have a degree in math and physics. I've been doing this stuff for as long as I can remember. I cannot look at this and know what x is. Now, most of us can both look at this and know what this x is going to be here. But we're not interested in getting the easy ones right. That has to happen. I'm interested in getting these guys right. So let's develop a strategy that always works, a process that we can use that will always allow us to get these right. And here's the process. The process is to remember that an equation is like a scale. And as long as you do the same thing to both sides of that scale, the scale stays balanced. Are you with me here, guys? A balanced scale is a picture of correct. But if I ever do one thing to one side and a different thing to the other side, the scale gets unbalanced. And that messes things up. Next, I always want to undo whatever's going on. So what I want to approach first is the plus and the minus. See how that says -5? You need to do the opposite or the inverse of it. If that's a -5, and I prefer to look at it as a -5 rather than a minus. If that's a -5, what is the opposite of -5? So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Now, die, because I wiped it out. That's exactly why I put it there. 4x equals, and 11 plus 5 is 16. Now, 4 times, and this is where you guys are doing it in your head. You're saying 4 times what number is 16? I don't want that. This means 4 times the variable, so I need to do the opposite and divide by 4. X is equal to 4. 16 divided by 4. Now, was it necessary to do that to get the first question right? No, because I know a lot of you didn't do it. But are skills based on this skill necessary to get that right? You bet.
Do you know the answer? Do you know?
No.
Figure it out right now.
I could if I wanted to. I have other work to do with you guys. Now, and honestly, by the end of the year, you'll be able to do it too, particularly with a calculator to help you do the ugly stuff. But the process is not difficult. In fact, we're going to learn a lot about the process, particularly the part that focuses on here today. Okay? And I would say within a week and a day or two, you'll be able to get that right. If you learn the proper strategies and the proper process. When you kick a soccer ball, or when you do a throw-in, or when you're playing defense, there's a particular way to play right. Now, you can get away with being sloppy and doing what you want to do when you're playing 5-year-olds. You don't get away with it when you're playing tough competition. So we need to improve how we're going about doing these equations. Remember, I focus first on the plus and the minus. I want to do the opposite of -5, which is +5. I always do it to both sides. I get 4x is equal to 16, and then I divide by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Any questions? Okay. So let's take that as our jumping point, and let's go forward to today's lesson. Evaluate each. Again, it's some pretty basic review here. Anything to the 0 is? 1. So 5 to the 0 is 1. Negative exponent. Reciprocal. 1 over, right? So that's 1 over 3 to the 2. Now what is 3 squared? Come on, 3 squared. 9. So that's 1 1/9. Okay. Next, express the product in scientific notation. Multiply coefficients, 35. Add exponents, 10 to the 17. Angela, question, answer.
I'm going to answer it. It's supposed to be 3.5.
That's right.
10 and 18.
That's right. I need to divide by 10 there, which means I need to multiply by 10 to balance it out. 3.5 times 10 to the 18 is correct. Now, I would call, when you're going to beat another team, you have to do certain things to beat them. And I look at beating a test like beating another team. Is anybody watching, anybody here watch football?
Which one?
Okay? Listen, if you give the quarterback time to make passes, if you give them all day to make passes, eventually the quarterback's going to beat you. If you stop the quarterback, you're going to beat the quarterback eventually. Anybody watching the World Series, the playoffs for baseball? Okay, if you're watching the playoffs, last night the Mets could have been tempted into a beanball war or something like that, but they got to win the game first, so they focused on what they needed to do. There's a guy on the Mets, Yoenis Cespedes. If you're going to beat the Mets, you have to shut Cespedes down. If you don't shut Yoenis Cespedes down, the Mets are going to beat you because he is a dynamic player. You can't let him beat you if you're playing against the Mets. Likewise, this question here is absolutely going to be all over your state assessment test. You're going to see it on the next test you take. You took it, it was on the last test you took. It's going to be there. So we have to learn how to get that question right. In fact, you know, I just want to come over here for 1 second. I printed out the new calendar for you guys. That's algebra. This is math 8. Here we are today. And we're doing multi-step equations until Thursday. And then we're going to do solving for the variable through the following Tuesday. And then we got another pre-test, test. And then we got 2 more weeks and then our last test of the marking period, okay? So we have a lot going on and we need to be prepared for this particular question, as you will see it in all of those places. Okay, now we get to something that we've been working on and more prerequisite skill. In fact, for those people who just said, you know, I know it's 4 times 4 minus 5 is 11, you would have a hard time with these questions. And by the way, I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked at your next quiz yet, but I'm pretty sure these 2 questions are going to be on something like this. It's just the way I think, and it's the way I operate. You would have had 3 or 4 class days to look at this stuff. And by then you should be ready to take a quiz and you should be ready to do well on that quiz. So when I look at this, 2 different types here. There's A and there's B. And what we have been working on with you guys is the ability to recognize if it's the same side, same operation, or if it's what? Opposite, don't say different, different. Opposite side, opposite operation, okay? Take a look at this first one, letter A. Is this a same side situation or an opposite side? How did you know it was the same side? Rach?
Because there's a number with a variable on the same side.
Yeah, there's 2 ends on the same side, okay? When you see the variables on the same side, you do the same operation. So just do what it says. What's 6 ends minus 3 ends? 3n. So I get 3n plus 7 equals 13. And now you're seeing why the ability to do that other question is so important. Because this looks just like 4n minus 5 is equal to 11. And what we're going to do is this. This says plus 7, so I do negative 7. Die. 3n is 6. Divided by 3. N is 2. Did you notice that once you do the same side, everything else is just like the quiz question? That's why the questions are on the quiz. I want to make sure that that particular step, that process, is clearly understood. Because if you add one little step to that one, now we clearly understand this equation. If you add one little step to this one, now we understand this equation. This is the prerequisite skill. Remember that word I used? Prerequisite. It's a necessary skill. Take a look over here. Is this the same side situation or an opposite side? Okay, got it.
Is that a 2?
At the end here? Yeah. 6 divided by 3 is 2. All right, so is this the same side or an opposite side situation? Somebody other than Rach?
Opposite.
Good, it is an opposite. Now, I have h's on both sides. We always look for variables first. When I look at the h's, I want to start with the smallest amount of h's. This is 5 h's, and what is this guy? 2 h's. Is this 2h positive or negative? Positive. Remember, this negative sign has to do with the 15, not the 2h. So I do a negative 2h to both sides. Now, what's 5 h's and negative 2 h's, or 5 h's minus 2 h's? 3 h's, good. 3h minus 1 is danger, danger, danger. This is the second most deadly type of math equation in the whole world. Well, it'll bite from this beauty, you're gonna
Like orange.
get you right away. We'll go for a walkabout.
Oh my God, it's Bigfoot.
This is a negative 15 here. What's the opposite here? See, now this looks just like the quiz question. That says minus 1, what do we do? Plus 1, good. Die. 3h is negative 14. Divide by 3, and I get a really ugly answer. It is what it is, negative 14 over 3. We can leave it as a fraction. Okay? So this work right here, all of that plus the ones above it, should be learned by you by now. So if you look at these questions and you say, extra help. Speaking of which, the library tonight, if you need extra help for your relearn packet, and it was my intent to make sure that we have extra help tomorrow. However, my boss says I have a faculty meeting, and I can't tell my boss what to do, at least publicly. So, I am going to be at this faculty meeting tomorrow. It's actually a very important and valuable faculty meeting. Most of them I don't like, but this one will have value to it. So, no extra help tomorrow morning, but there will be extra help tonight at the library from 5:30 to 7:30, and there will be extra help Thursday morning here. Okay? All right. So today's lesson, we're going to learn about the distributive property. It's a very important skill. Let's think, if you will, with me about this word to distribute. Forget math for a minute. The English language, what does distribute mean?
To pass out.
Yeah, exactly. To pass out, to give out. When I think of the distributive property, I think of two things. The first thing I think of is the Great Depression.
Okay.
Yeah, because they used to have, and you know what, they still have them. They're just not as out in the open as they used to be. They used to have these things called soup kitchens. Have you ever heard of soup kitchens?
Still have.
Okay, yeah, like I said, they do, but they're kind of discreet now. See, during the Great Depression, things were so bad that if you went down to Shorefront Park, people were living in tents in Shorefront Park. They couldn't afford houses. And, what's the matter? Take the pass, make it quick. Not only that, but they couldn't afford their own food. My grandfather survived the Great Depression. I have a video of him that you'll see later in the year. And in the video, he talks about how important your education is and such. And he talks about growing up during the Great Depression. And one of the things was, for the better part of 3 years, all they ever had for dinner, if it was warm weather months, they'd have some salad, and then every day, just about, for years, ketchup sandwiches. They could not afford anything more than ketchup sandwiches. He would try to go fishing with his brothers, catch some fish, bring them home, and fry them up. But they weren't always successful. So fishing, ketchup sandwiches, that's what they ate. During that time, it was so bad around here, world-wise, that on Main Street, they would have soup kitchens. And lines would stretch down Main Street of people who couldn't afford to eat, couldn't afford their own food. And they would come into the soup kitchens, and they would distribute food to them. And it was like a cafeteria. As they would come through, they'd take a soup ladle, big ladle, put 2 scoops in the soup ladle, and put a biscuit on their plate, and they'd move along, and nobody ever paid for their meals. It was just a way to keep them from starving to death. That was distributing to them. Now, the other time is a much happier time when I think of distribute. I think of Christmas time. And I think of when my kids were little, and we would buy them Christmas. Oh. Did I just ruin the Santa thing?
Yes, no, I'm just kidding.
Did I?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we all know.
Really? I thought I blew that there for a minute. I have two nephews who, like, until about 8th grade, really believed. So they used to, like, go on the internet and look at the Santa tracker.
I used to do that when
So-
I was little.
Yeah, and they were like 13 believing, and I was like 3 years old, 4 years old, and my uncle played Santa Claus, so he calls me up, he sits in the chair, goes, ho, 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 ho. And he sits me in his lap and he goes, what would you like for Christmas? And I reached up, I grabbed his beard and I pulled it off. So I was a little different than my nephews. So anyway, I think of my kids, and I think we bought the Christmas presents, they're under the tree, and they would read the label and they would distribute the present to whomever it should go to. They gave the present out. Come on, put it back and knock it off.
keep it.
End those. Now, the next thing that happens is this. We are going to distribute here. Distribute, I like to draw these two little hoops. Because what they do is they tell you what you have to multiply by. Distributing is multiplication. What operation is distributing? Multiplication. So check it out. Ready? What's 5 times x? Guys, 5x. And then what's 5 times a positive 2? 10. So the answer to the first one is 5x plus 10. You do the one underneath it. Okay, so now what we look at is 3 times each of them. Again, I'm distributing that 3. What's 3 times 3w? Everybody? 9w. Good. And what's 3 times positive 5? 15. Nice. Okay, try the next one. 5n times 2n minus 3. Okay, what is 5n times 2n? Everybody? 10n squared. Since you're multiplying them, you have to add exponents. 1 plus 1 is 2. Now, that's the kind of work we're doing in the relearn packet. So if you had a problem with it on the last test, we'll straighten it out for the next test. Next, what's 5n times negative 3? Negative 15n. Good. Okay, you do the 3 on the next side there.
Turn up.
Why does he always go back there?
Just do it back there. Very routine.
Okay, so what's 7 times n? 7n. And what's 7 times negative 4? Negative 28. Very good. Let's try the next one. What's 2x times x?
X squared.
Very good. And what's 2x times negative 4? Negative 8x. You can't forget that x, okay? What about the next one? 7h times 3h. 21h squared. Nice. And what's 7h times negative 2? Negative 14h. Okay. So that is how to distribute. And I know you did some of that last year. And now what we're going to do is take that distributing and apply it to equations. Now, if you are good at those kind of questions that we worked on the quiz, fix that hood. If you're good at that, this should be pretty easy for you. Ready? Let's distribute the 5. What's 5 times n? 5n. What's 5 times negative 2?
Negative 10.
Equals 15. And now, hey, doesn't that look familiar?
Yes.
Right? Go ahead, finish it up. God bless.
Thank you.
I'm not sure. No. We're out of here in under 2 minutes. So you're going to have to ask your next teacher. Ready? What's my first step here, guys? Caitlin, what do I do first? Non-negative 5. Definitely not.
You're supposed to, 10.
Add 10.
Oh, it's 10.
We always start with plus and minus. Die, die. 5n equals 25. What's my next step?
Divide.
Divide by 5. Good. And then I get n equals 5. Now try the one under it. You're going to have to distribute, and you're going to have to do a little same side operation thing going on here. Okay. What's 5 times x?
5x.
5x. What's 5 times negative 4? Negative 20. Plus 2x equals 1. Oh, same side, right? Look at the x's. Do exactly what it says. 5x plus 2x. What is that?
7x.
7x. Minus 20 is 1. Now we're into that standard two-stepper. Send in the ground troops. Add to 20, you're going to get x is 3. Hasta la vista, vaya con Dios, salute, ta-ta, arrivederci, smile a lot. 2 more days of this to go before we are done with those. Yeah.